internal security. And that is how I argue with those that are saying the military should remove its hands from our internal security situation. They don't understand the dimension and the depth and latitude of the security issue we have in Nigeria. When the Nigerian policemen have to deal, or Nigerian police force has to deal with ISIL and ISIS and Boko Haram, and you say you allow them to manage a situation where they are seriously undermanned because they have a less capacity boots on the ground, no equipment, no tooling. You see policemen that can hardly, they use their money to procure boots and uniform to fight this issue. It leaves much to be desired. So the interventions, quote and unquote, that the IGP is trying to provide, which is not novel, the same, his predecessors have been doing the same, is what I call a fire brigade approach. And then the question is, if the IGP is providing this intervention for Abuja, what is happening to the other states? So you can imagine the challenges the IGP is facing. So we need to see the president going back to the drawing board. While we have the quick fixes, we are happy to hear the arrest of this notorious kidnapper in Abuja, which we need to talk about. Why is it, unless you have a presidential focal point or order, that you quickly see some quick interventions and yield results? What about sustainability? What are the root causes? Like I said, we need to go back to the fundamental issues. So the IGP intervention will be there, but I will tell you it's a flash in the pan. I'll bet maybe in the next 3 to 6 months, the IGP will try to struggle with his man and material resources to see how he will bring balance for us to maintain this optics or political standing to the world and to Nigerians that we are up to the task. But there's a lot of work to be done over and beyond even hiring the personnel, over and beyond even bringing the equipment. For example, we have less than 30,000 immigration officers with over 1,400 unmanned insecure border points in Nigeria, land and air, which is a critical failure factor to secure your nation. So I will talk about policies and other down the line. But in the interim, I hear the intervention by the IGP for Abuja, but I want to also hear the tactical measure he's taking to take care of the overall, all the states in Nigeria, because, it is one for all for one for this insecurity situation in Nigeria.
All right, let's bring in the group captain. Group Captain Shehu, you've heard all that Baba Yusuf has said. He's really touched on the issue of numbers, and some have said that is a key challenge, especially now that the IGP is talking about creating special intervention squads. If you're going to do that for every state, where do you find the personnel to do that? So what impact do you think that, this special intervention squad is going to have? Because Abuja is not the only state, or Plateau is not the only state, as bad as it is in this state, but other states are also having security challenges.
Okay, thank you very much. With due respect, since this IGP come, with respect to him, we've heard of launching special squad for this, special squad for that, special squad for this. The other guest we are having who's speaking with me has spoken. It is numbers. I congratulate the IGP for one thing. I've heard him saying, these are the numbers that I have. I need this kind of numbers. Other security agencies should do a similar assessment. Because no matter, like I will continue to say, no matter what you have in technology, there are certain tasks. There are certain tasks that are human, that is a human being that will do them. If you don't have the human being to dominate an area, there's little that just having technology will do. Technology can only assist. So we have to talk about all these issues he raised. A situation where security men buy even uniform, buy accessories to do their work is not good. It is only in Nigeria, let me be honest, and it still baffles me, where somebody entering into the military or entering into the police is told to buy uniform or to buy boots. Where somebody decides to enter into the security forces, that is his contribution to the country. The country should be able to meet him halfway by providing everything that he needs for his requirement. Specific to the issue of kidnapping, I would like us to put more emphasis on catching the kidnappers before they take people. Because when you are talking about kinetic, about storming, about rescuing, like I said, you are already late. And rescuing, once a kidnapper has people with him, the chances of any rescue without killing the victims is very low. So we should be more emphasis on using all we have to stop these kidnappers. Abuja is catching the attention because it is the center of government. Not that the other areas are not there. Now we are hearing unconfirmed reports that foreign embassies are thinking of moving out of Abuja because it's not an official thing, but it is out there in the social media, whether it is true or not.
That is still in the realm of speculation. But Group Captain, I want to come in. I want to come in here because both of you have talked about earlier the challenge of the welfare of security agents in the country, especially the police. But some people will say, look, we've had this issue for years. Our response time, how does that impact on response time? But which is always the problem. We spoke to when the attacks the Christmas Eve attacks in Plateau State happened. We spoke to residents who kept saying, we gave security agents information and nothing was done, or they came too late. That's always the problem. Why are we having a challenge with response time?
A very valid point. A very valid point. Personally, whenever there is any attack, I always try to go back and say, when was the first alarm blown? Whether it is the police, whether it is DS, whether it's military, when did they arrive at the scene? Unfortunately, we see unacceptable long times of reaction. But response time also is dependent on certain things. Again, I come back to numbers. Response time is a function of numbers. How many people do you have near the incident? It is also a function of placement. If the people are near, like in the plateau you said, if we had security men near identified flash points, of course that caused their reaction time to reach there. The action time is also a function of communication between one element to another, so that you can call the reinforcement, you can report. So all this, they are part of things that, and then reaction time is also dependent on mobility assets. Mobility assets, okay, like in Plateau, we say there are some terrains that are, they are not motorable by high hillocks, which is what our use. Then you should have other means of, of transportation that is there. So you see, there are several issues: numbers, communication, mobility assets, even the placement. If you put too many of your personnel where in the headquarters and live in areas that are known, then of course, before they move from that headquarters to where the action is, there's going to be reaction time. Our reaction time is actually very poor. Most times our security agencies, they arrive at a time where the issue has finished, only to go and count dead bodies. We should talk about reaction time. And reaction time is a function of training. Whether it is a police that's responded, whether it's a military unit that has responded, they should be taken for lessons learning. Okay, we arrived today after 1 hour. 1 hour is not enough. We want 30 minutes. For the next, you continue. There are, like the London police, for example. London police can react within 3 minutes. From anywhere in London, they can arrive. So we have to be looking at this reaction time and shortening it. But shortening it, like I said, requires certain things: numbers, mobility assets, communication, and all these things. If you take, for example, the police may have a vehicle. They will tell you the vehicle, maybe there's only 2 gallons of petrol in the vehicle. Then, if there is a call 2-3 kilometers away, what do you expect that group of policemen to do? Virtually nothing. So what they will do,
let me put you on hold.
Is to arrive after the bandits have left and count the bodies. And so reaction time, I agree with you, is very, very important, but we have to look at all the factors that contribute to low reaction time.
Right now, let me bring in Baba Yusuf to look at all of these factors. Baba Yusuf, because sometimes, you will hear residents say, we got letters, from kidnappers, and some of this information was given that they are going to come on so and so date, or from bandits that are going to come on so and so date. We sent this information to the security agencies. They knew sometimes even 3 days before that this was going to happen, and the attack happened and happened successfully. And so you wonder, and I understand the issue of welfare. Nigerians understand the issue of welfare, but in that kind of situation, where there was information days before, and that kind of attack still happened. Buhari, the issue around Buhari, the border town in Abuja is not, a one-day issue. It's been on, TVC has been reporting it. And, we still hear about kidnappings in those communities. What do you think is actually responsible for that slow response time?
I will allude it to 3 or 4 factors. First of all, the first one, I will agree with the group captain with regards to response time, which I will put as a fraction or a function of operational, framework and the system. What is your SOP? And even if you have the SOP, do you have the man and material resources to activate the SOP to deliver the response time? For example, That is one from an operational point of view.
Well, just to let people know, I don't want our viewers to be confused. SOP will be standard operating procedures. I just wanted to let people know that.
Standard operating system, sorry, and that is the template to say when this happens, what do we do? Okay, now moving on from there, the overall operational framework can only be executed if you have the man and material resources to be able to deal with that situation. So it's not, for me, I will even put the welfare aspect aside. The Nigerian police force, or rather the total Nigerian armed forces, which includes the military, the civil defense, and even the Nigerian immigration, are requiring man and material. So if you don't have fuel to move from point A to B, that is not a welfare issue. That is a working tool issue, which is a very fundamental issue. Now, moving on from there, the second aspect is also the psyche, the psychology, and the value orientation of the forces. In this case, for example, the police force, where I totally agree with you. I have had situations where personally I have escalated issues of national security in this country and nothing was done. Now, the response time to intelligence is either a function of the operational issue we talked about or a function of a rot within the system which we cannot overlook. Of course, the Nigerian police or the armed forces are a factor of the overarching Nigerian system of which our value system has eroded over time. I cast our minds back a little bit some years ago during the administration of President Buhari about 3 or 4 years ago, where a member or a staff of the presidency raised an issue with regards to criminality in her domain within the Abuja metropolis. And she raised this issue, she flagged it, she reported the matter to the right agencies, and those people were arrested. But guess what happened? We later heard that members of that security organization, reported back to the criminals, and at the end of the day, that lady was murdered in her house. And these are some of the issues where you even see citizen participation is eroding. We know what happened on the way to Kaduna over time, where people report issues of terrorists and the villages are sacked. So response time is a function of operational capacity, the core values of the organization, and also lack of consequence management, where the requisite materials are man on the ground and nothing was done. What was done by the hierarchy or chain of command or by Mr. President, as the case may be, to make sure that when people receive such intelligence report, because it's not just a police issue, we also have the same issue across the agencies of government, people sit on their hands until when things happen and then they react. So in that situation, operationally, even if you have the man and material, you cannot deal with an issue that you have refused to proactively deal with, that you react to. The same issue that we are seeing in Plateau. Intelligence reports go out, nothing was done. But these things will continue if there is no consequence management. The biggest issue in Nigeria with regards to insecurity, with regard to our economic situation, is lack of consequence management. When people perform, they are not properly compensated. When people fail, they don't face the consequences. Unless that is done, people will not sit up and do the right thing. So that if the material is not there, the process will escalate the issue and they will be provided for. Until that is done, people are basically fending for themselves, as the case may be, because of lack of consequence management. But I dare say to land here, unless Mr. President review this from an overarching strategic point of view, these tactical, impulsive, knee-jerk activities will not resolve the issue, because indeed the criminals and the terrorists have seriously embedded themselves, not just in Abuja, and not just in the country, but even within our military apparatus.
On that, Baba Yusuf, because it sort of ties into what the FCT minister, Wike, was saying when he had that meeting with stakeholders in Buhari Local Council. He particularly said, I'm just going to rephrase what he said. He said, look, I know some of you are here. You are watching me now, even as we speak. I'm just rephrasing what he said. How valid is that statement in terms of the level of infiltration of some of these members of, or some members of this kidnapping gang in those communities?
You see, Precious, it is terrible. It is worse than that. I would like us to expand that conversation beyond kidnapping to include banditry, to include terrorists. Let me remind us what we already know, because most of the security issues in Nigeria we all know. We just need to cast our mind in the right direction or look at the right direction. The hiring process into our security forces is the same thing with the hiring process in our civil service. There's need to review that. But when you have endemic corruption in the system, then you have a big issue to deal with. What Minister Wike said, His Excellency, is correct. And like I said earlier, I gave an instance of this. Why I made that example with the staff of the presidency. This is a privileged, quote and unquote, citizen of the country working for the president, coldly murdered, no consequences. Now we all know that criminal gangs have been infiltrating the Nigerian police and the Nigerian armed forces by way of paying their way, and I'm saying this with all sense of responsibility. It is in the public domain. We have seen videos how people pay money and get into these forces, or issues of nepotism and favoritism. And these people, are promoted or sponsored by these criminal gangs to go into the system and become part of the system. Now, that is the biggest issue. And that is why even our proactive measures, our tactical plans, are already known to these terrorists and criminal gangs before our good citizens and good officers, move in to execute. And that is a big issue. So what His Excellency Wike is saying is true. And I call on him and Mr. President and the IGP and all the top-line leaders of our security, agencies to look into this and deal with it, because that is the biggest issue we have. When you have what you call the enemy within, then there's nothing you can do to succeed, because unless you deal with that enemy, you minimize to, and first of all, identify, find the root cause of the issue and know how to deal with that. There's less that you can do. And that is why we have today a situation whereby when our armed forces move in for an operation, before they get there, whether it is the bandits or the kidnappers, they are already aware. And even when they are arrested, if we go back to the issue of this notorious Evans kidnapper, we heard one at Eya, he was arrested in Owerri, in Imo State, and later on he was let to go. He went through the system because of the bad eggs we have within the armed forces. Of course, like I said, it's not only about the armed forces, but an overarching issue that is a societal rot that needs to be dealt with. Otherwise, systems, processes, procedures will not work when you have corrupt people.
Right. I want to bring in the group captain on this particular issue. Group Captain Shehu, how deep is this particular infiltration? And then, also talk to us about the issue of the financiers, because one would imagine that where there is a crime, there is someone financing it. How important is it that we should start going after the financiers of these terrorist groups?
Sorry, please, the first part of your question about financiers?
The first question was, how deep is this infiltration of these kidnappers? And then what should we do in terms of going after the financiers of these terrorist groups?
Well, unfortunately, since the last administration, we have been hearing financiers have been apprehended. But unfortunately, you see, sometimes there are information that government should hide. But there is some certain information that hiding it will only, give birth to conspiracy theories. Former Attorney General Malami, many months back, said that some financiers of whether it is Boko Haram, whether it is terrorists, whether it is even bandits, have been apprehended. But then everything went silent. For me, as a security expert, I don't think it is everything in security that you need to hide. Sometimes there are certain things you even need to tell people so that they cooperate with the government, so that they trust that the government does not have a hand. We have different theories about this happenings in security in Nigeria. So even believe, rightly or wrongly, that government is supporting or government is financing, even though with due respect, I always ask myself, what could be the possible gain? A human being, a rational human being will always do something that he will gain. What will a government in power gain by supporting terrorists to be attacking the country that is ruling? I do not have answered that question. But then, when you come and make announcement that we have terrorists, even in fact, in the first place, why did you announce it if you are not going to name the people? Why do we like hiding things that should be out in the open? It gives this rise to this. So people are tired of hearing we have arrested. What people want to see is names and people publicly being prosecuted. That is the issue. This government inherited that stigma from the last government. So it is up to them now. We are still hearing that financiers. So many reports are there, but no names. Even when there are names, no prosecution. You need to do that. Even telling that we have investigated, these people are not guilty, we have released them, I think is better than just giving people a bite that we have arrested financiers, then everything goes by. Then people will start coming with a different conspiracy
you're right
theories.
about,
I always like to give.
You're right about the issue of the AGF saying that, look, they have identified some financiers of terrorist groups in this country. But I want to give the last word as we begin to wind down this conversation to Baba Yusuf. I also wanted to speak on the issue of financiers and then the implication of the crowdfunding to pay for ransom for terrorists. If that had gone through, what would have been the implication?
Thank you very much. The issue of financing of terrorism is not a Nigerian issue. It's a global issue, and we have seen proactive, forward-thinking countries how they are dealing with this issue. Indeed, we have our regulations and our laws in place to deal with this issue. But the issue is, like I said, lack of consequence management. It has to do with execution. It has to do with political will of the president, because he is the top line leader. And of course, down the radar, the leaders within the leadership value chain. We have heard severally issues of, I think there's an ongoing prosecution by the DSS of an alleged terrorist financier or collaborator. But this remains, when a country reduces issue of insecurity, kidnapping and banditry and whatever terrorism to a political issue, precious, then that tells you that we are facing a doom and gloom that will not come out of. This is beyond politics. This is beyond optics. When we use this rhetorics and mantra to redirect attention of citizens, then we are saying we are not serious. I agree with the name and shame process. I agree with not just naming but taking action. And it has to do with communication strategy of the government to come and tell us we have done A and we have been able to achieve B, so that other citizens will continue to support the government and the bad guys will know that things are no longer going to be the same. And this is a holistic affair, including the banking system, the financial sector, that are either inadvertently aiding and abetting this. We need to see consequences. Only when there are consequences will things change, going forward. But again, landing and finishing this, Mr. President needs to review our overall national security strategy. And in doing so, I call on all concerned not to be looking at this modular approach, but overarching. What am I saying? Our domestic security should not be isolated from 5 factors, which we can see the Americans do it, the Europeans do it, and the Chinese do it. The success of our homeland security, if I may use that, is dependent on our foreign policy, on our immigration policy, on our border policy, economic policy, because where there is hunger and strife, you don't expect people to just turn away, according to Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need to also tie it with our socio-economic policies. Also, justice or a sense of it is another critical issue, because this is a multifaceted. And I hope in reviewing this security strategy, government will do the needful so that we'll be sure-footed in resolving this issue short, mid to long term. And indeed, round pegs and round holes. When you hire the wrong people and give them these critical positions of security in Nigeria, internal or external, you will continue to slide into abyss of backwardness. Round pegs and round holes, Mr. President. Very key, very important.
And the talk about economic policies and justice will resonate with a lot of Nigerians. Thank you so much for taking out your time to talk to us. Always a pleasure to have you on, Baba Yusuf. Thank you so much, policy analyst. And also to security expert, Group Captain Shehu Sadiq, retired. Always a pleasure as well. Thank you so much, sir, for talking to us.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
All right, you're watching StandPoint. We're going to take a break now. The issues around the certificate racketeering in the country, which was brought to the fore once again by an investigative report done by a reporter, is our next conversation. Just a few new twists to it. I will have that conversation in just a moment. Stay with us.
matters.
We analyze the stock market, shares, bonds, and the thrilling world of cryptocurrencies.
We unveil and analyze complex policies of the CBN and other government parastatals as they affect your everyday life, keeping you a step ahead every time.
Okay, this is incredible. Facts matter. Our team dives deep to separate fact from popular opinion.
We simplify complex government policies as it impacts your everyday life, helping you navigate the ever-changing financial landscape.
Watch Business Nigeria every weekday at 2 p.m. only on TVC News. First, with breaking news. There is always more to a story than the screaming headline. The part of a story that is not told casts a shadow. It's like the part of an object that is not reached by light. On TVC News, I'm able to explore the many angles there are to a story, talking to stakeholders, asking the difficult questions, and digging for facts. I believe the viewers are able to make a better decision if they're well informed and understand not just a part, but the complete story. TVC News, first with breaking news.
Thanks for staying with us. This is StandPoint. Let's now turn to the education sector, where just recently the Nigerian government listed 58 tertiary institutions. They're illegal tertiary institutions Nigerian students should avoid. And these institutions are in Togo, republics of Togo and Benin. They have their campuses here in Nigeria, some states in Nigeria. And also the federal government said it has now set up a committee to look into all of these issues, a certificate racketeering situation, and come up with a report. Now, let's bring in someone who is in that sector. He's a former presidential candidate of the Accord Party for the 2023 general election, and is also in the education sector as a school proprietor. He is Professor Chris Imomole. Good to have you join us.
Yeah, thank you for having me on your show today. Thank you.
So it was quite important to bring you on because I know that you have schools as well, and you have schools in Togo and Benin Republic, and you must have heard, even before now that this report came out, of this kind of certificate racketeering. What do you make of it, and give us an idea of how this really plays out?
Okay, education for us is very critical, and that was why all through our campaign, we were very focused on education, because we understand what it means to be educated and how it ties to national development. But it's unfortunate that in this part of the world, people celebrate more the receipt for knowledge than the knowledge itself. Certificates is just a receipt for knowledge. So if one had not gone through a process to earn such a receipt, then there won't be need. So what the federal government is doing is applauding, because we need to begin to look at the system, even as stakeholders in that sector, to begin to ensure that the right thing is continuously done, not just looking at these countries alone, even at home. The committee that have been set up, looking at their mandate, is wonderful, because the mandate has also expanded at also looking at what the universities, even in Nigerians, are doing. This is to ensure that everybody, be it Nigerians that study outside and those that studied in Nigeria, get certificate legitimately by studying through the channels that are provided, channels of which one is either you study in a Nigerian university or you study abroad legitimately and come back home with your certificate. What had happened is unfortunate, and we believe that the federal government, with what they've announced, it's a step in the right direction to checkmate abnormalities. Abnormalities like as this, can be perpetrated by agents, can be perpetrated by individuals in these sectors. Maybe if there was a time even in Nigeria, there was a news of a particular university in Nigeria who also was involved, who was alleged to be involved rather. If you look at this process critically, some of this issue might not emanate from the management of the schools. Some of this issue might emanate from people who want to take advantage of the vulnerability of the system to commit such crime. So this is a wake-up call to school owners, to everyone in that sector, to begin to look at their system and making sure that the system is tight free to ensure only those who have the knowledge, who have gone through the legitimate process of learning through the legitimate system to learn, earns the certificate of knowledge.
But is it enough to delist these schools? Because again, one would imagine that the challenge is not just with these schools, the challenge is with our own processes here. So is it enough to just delist these schools? What should we be doing?
Okay, if you notice, 2 days ago, I was so happy to hear that the FEC had approved a transnational educational policy system. You know, the problem we have is that in a system like Nigeria, where a lot of people take JAM, and we might not have enough institutions to absorb them, you begin to see people who want to jettison out of Nigeria to study out. And there are windows that permit institutions, for example, who can also, because there are so many ways one could get admission into foreign or local universities. Nigeria, for example, is through JAM. While for international institutions, there are many ways of credit transfer. You have the NCC program, you have the Equal program, you have a lot of credit transfer program where people could legitimately, you know, use a professional certificate to transfer to any other international institute and start from where you stop and finish from there legitimately, come back to Nigeria with a degree. You know, these are the processes that I feel the Ministry of Education is looking at, and that, I believe, was what bet the policy that FEC, Federal Executive Council, approved some few days ago, which is called the Transnational Educational Policy, as to see that Nigeria as a country is a signatory to the Addis Convention that encourage student mobility from one region to another, which also gives students that exposure that is also a function of knowledge. You know, you see what's happening in Europe. For example, we talk about the Erasmus program, where students could be transferred from one school to another. I think what the federal government is looking at, and which led to that, I'm just thinking, is the fact that Nigerian students need to be that mobility is key, but mobility must be done using the right window and the right channel.
And when your schools,
as regards the school that was delisted, the ministry would understand. They know why they have done that. For example, if a university abroad is operating in a country without due license, you know, that of course will lead to that. However, we must begin to look at the program that exists in the educational system where collaborations and credit transfer majorly between two institutions. For example, like ICANN, you can have your ICANN certificate, and with the ICANN certificate, transfer to another school to start from 200 level. You know, yes, we need to begin to look at that space also. And school owners also need to begin to ensure that that window is used legitimately, not in the way of what happened with the investigation by the journalist, where he never went anywhere. He was seated in his house, he paid money,
and he was still able to get a certificate. But Prof, I wanted to ask you, if your schools were affected by all of this, because I know that you have, I mentioned earlier, that you have schools in both Benin Republic and Togo.
Well, the issue is the suspension announced by the federal government. We are all involved in this to make sure that we work with the Nigerian government to sanitize this industry. Yes, we have in Benin Republic and Togo, there is a lot of Nigerians who are studying in universities in this school legitimately. And when Nigeria, for example, announced that accreditation of documents and evaluation have been suspended, Nigerians who studied there would be consigned. But what I feel we are doing, which we are doing, is to work in line with the federal government of Nigeria to making sure that proper investigation is done and that the industry is sanitized. Because the students, at the end of the day, would graduate, they become the engineers that will fix our economy. They'll become the medical doctors, they'll become the accountants. So we are in support with what the federal government is doing, and we are fully confident at the end of the day, this industry will be sanitized.
And just before we let you go, I want to ask you the process of registering schools in these two countries. Because in Nigeria, you know that the federal government will say, look, we've given approval to this number of universities, we've approved this number of universities. There's a process. But in Togo and Benin Republic, what was the process of getting approval? How easy it is? Because it will seem as though schools just spring up in this country.
No. You know, the issue with the investigation and what happened was not really about the way the school was accredited. Every country have the accreditation system and processes, which every school in those countries would have to go through. to get accreditation. I can tell you that in Togo, it's very tough to establish a university there. Yes, because they have a process, standardization process, accreditation process, which you must follow from A to Z. And even in Togo, the government in Togo have started what is called a national education for university students, where all university students have to write national. So they have the way they also checkmate the system of education in this country. However, the challenge that led to this crisis
Prof, just to confirm that you're still there. All right, I think we'll lost.
Who are doing
all right. All right, so Prof.
So what I'm saying.
All right, so I have 30 seconds left. Apologies for cutting in because we just have 30 seconds. I wanted to ask you, so what is the fate of your students at this moment?
No, for our students,
right, the network seems to have lost connection. With Prof there, it would have been important to know the fate of his students, if they are affected or not. But I'm sure that in subsequent conversations, we'll have with him, that issue will come up. Thank you so much for watching. You've been watching StandPoint. Remember, there is a repeat broadcast at 11 p.m. tonight and 5 a.m. on Sunday morning. Thanks for watching. I am Precious Amayu.
Every major news story is with many perspectives and layered with different levels of impact.
Hello. What time did this happen? We will be right there.
At TVC News, we follow the big and major news, gathering the facts, witnessing the outcome.
I am here live at the aftermath of the approval of the new national minimum wage.
We are TV Station of the Year, not just for breaking news, but for being first, fair and accurate. TVC News, first with breaking news.
Every second, every minute, every hour and every day, time doesn't just tick away. It's a countdown to political decisions that shape our world.
This country must move.
Imagine the impact these decisions have on our lives. Some are consequential, others may leave us intrigued or baffled.
You will have no better friend and partner than Nigeria.
Step in and feel the frenzy like never before. Join me every weekday for an hour of fact-finding interviews where questions cut to the core.
What does Tinubu has that other 17 candidates do not have?
I will dig in to get to the heart of issues.